Thanks for joining. I think this is the last presentation in the schedule, so I appreciate you guys joining us. Let me do a brief, I'll try to summarize in 1 or 2 sentences. So my name is Truong. I've been working with SAS software back in version 6.12, I think it was, when it has a DOS-looking screen, for over 25 years. And the industry I work in is pharmaceutical, meaning doing TFL reporting, creating CDIS data sets, that type of work. But my focus is in systems development, meaning SAS macros, automating the way we do our analysis and reporting. So that's my background. My co-author is Pradeep. He'll introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Pradeep Brahman. Up here, I've been working with SAS, using SAS for about 15 years, dealing with healthcare data and also the pharmaceutical environment. I'm interested in a lot of utility macros or utility tool development as well as data visualizations, and it's slowly gearing towards the ML part also. That's where my interests are. Yeah, we can get started.
Great. Let me describe to you what we're going to be talking about today. SAS programs are basically ASCII files in the file system. And the challenge we have is each time we make an edit, potentially you can lose an earlier version. So our goal is to explain why it's important, not only in the regulated industry, but any SAS program we produce, to have some kind of change management, change control. And then what we did was we evaluated 4, maybe 6 tools, but we're going to narrow it down to 4 tools that we'll be presenting on. 2 of them are SAS tools, and 2 of them are kind of open source tools that are available for you to use to manage your SAS programs. And then we have criteria requirements such as ease of use. The one thing that we found, which requirements come and go, but this one, dealing with our IT department, we found that the configuration of each tool, there's some challenges, so I just wanted to mention that as a distinction from the other requirements that we have, like being able to make a backup version, tracking the changes. But then afterwards, we'll summarize our findings. We try to be systematic, creating a grading system for each tool. And then based on that, hopefully, it will help you guys decide, what tool may be useful for you. It helped us to help in our evaluation with the summary. So I'll jump back and forth with the slide. I don't think we have a little clicker. So why do we do this? Now, you may have an example. So you work on a SAS program all morning and all day, and you think you're making great progress, and then something happens. And the logic you're working on, the data sets and the reports, gets all messed up. And the one code that you need is from this morning. And so you call your IT department, and they said, oh, we don't have the backup from this morning. We have it maybe last night, maybe the week before. And so basically you lost all your work. So tracking change can really help you in this area. Another example is you're picking up a program that another programmer has worked on, and you have no idea what led to this point. Or even your own program that you worked on last week. And maybe 25 years ago when I first started, I remember exactly what I worked on last week. Nowadays, I'm not sure what I did, this morning, so it's hard to pick up. But track changes really helps you look at the metadata, figure out what changes were made, and you can pick up where you left off, even if it's from another programmer. So this audit trail is really useful for the integrity of your program, but also in a regulated environment. The audit trail and traceability is what they call is essential. It's actually a legal requirement for us.
So let me talk about what our evaluation criteria and how we came about. The first thing was the group size of our organization. You can group them into large, medium, or small, dependent on how large or how small your group is. For us, it was a fairly large number, so about 80 programmers signing into a server and working on SAS. And then the next criteria was what is the operating environment, whether it's a Windows environment, a Unix environment, or some other environment. And then the third one was the restriction of access permissions to different users or different programmers to the same files. And within a project, you want certain groups working on one file having a read-write access, and then the same group or a validation group would want to work with the same file, but just reading through, not the write access. So, in our current process, the last one is what we are doing. It's a manual change control on the header of a code. That's how we have the audit trail going at this moment. But we were thinking about how to automate the whole process, or create a process to, that we can better manage. Next one. So the first tool that we evaluated was an enterprise guide. The enterprise guide has added features to do change management within. So with what you see on the left, most of you would know it's just ASCII files, non-embedded programs, whereas on the right is an embedded repository or embedded project within which all these programs have been embedded. So next slide.
Okay, so what we did was we started this project near the beginning, or actually in the middle of last year, and we're still working on finalizing it. And the version we downloaded was 7.15. For those EG users, they constantly prompt you with new updates, which is great. They're constantly updating EG with new features. But what we found out is the core change control engine is relatively stable. So I believe if you install the latest version of EG today, it will have all the same features that we were discussing. In the program editor, in the previous version, you may not see some of the buttons on the upper right. And the button I have highlighted is called commit. The way it works is that you would develop your program as before in the same editor. Nothing has changed. When you think you've made enough changes that merits a version, then you click on this commit button. What the commit button does is it captures your program and the related metadata, and it stores it in the repository. We call it a repository because that's terminology used in other software systems, but SAS just refers to it as a project file. But anyways, when you click on that, all your code will be stored in the project file. And then you have the option of typing a little 1 or 2 sentence description to your change. This is analogous to when you're writing a SAS program. What we do now manually is we type in the program header. I've modified the algorithm, blah, blah, blah. So this is helpful for that, a few weeks later when you look back at your version and say, what did I do? Or what did that other programmer do? You read the sentence and you said, that's where I left off. So that's where the senior moments, you really rely on this thing. So then you hit commit. Once you have a few versions created, there's this history button that comes up. It's on the right, similar to before. So at any point you can click on that history button. And what happens is it shows all the versions that you have for this particular program. And on the right of it, as you can see, it has a little text description. That's the little metadata description that you typed in. So by looking and scrolling through these, you know exactly what version did what. And you can compare 2 versions. You can compare the latest one with the old one. It'll show your program side by side with color coding of the differences. And you can revert or roll back to an old version, like, that morning version I had was much better. I really messed up after lunch. After lunch my work became bad, and so I'm going to go back to my morning version. So you can do that, just click on the revert, and it makes the current version the version that you have in your history. The other distinction I wanted to explain is that when Pradeep showed that screen where you have your program in the file system, as a whole bunch of ASCII files, and then in EG you have the EGP file, the project file. The way it works is that as soon as you take a SAS program from your file system and you click on embed, it basically embeds, it brings in the code from the ASCII file in your file system into the project file. Now that's when all of this change control features are available. If you were to only use ASCII files in the file system, it would not allow for all of the functionality. So this is what you have to do for each program, is embed it into your project file. At any point, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Some of these are not obvious to us. Yeah, question.
Is it also possible with the query builder, or is it only possible with the programming part?
Oh, that's a good question. The question was, is this available for the query builder or only the programming? The way EG is built is primarily for SAS programs, and so it's intended for, versioning SAS programs. Now, other tools that I'll describe will have output files, data sets, versioning of any file that you have. That's different. EG focuses on SAS programs, so these functionality I'm describing is only for embedding programs, not in the query builder. Feel free to ask other questions anytime. Now, the other SAS tool we evaluated is called SAS LSAF. LSAF, hopefully I'm getting the letters right, Life Science Analytics Framework, LSAF, sometimes short for, but it's actually specific to the pharmaceutical industry. But in the next release, we talked to some SAS folks, and they said the next release, the interface is going to be integrated with SAS Studio. So for those that use SAS Studio, notice this is a thin client, it's a browser, web browser. Everything will, if you use SAS Studio, it will be very familiar. But the way it works is that in this software, you look at your program through the web browser. You can right mouse click on it, and then there's this option to check out. The workflow is a little different in that you check it out of the repository, you start doing your versioning, and then you check it back in. EG, basically, as you're working and committing, the workflow is different, but this checking out is analogous to that commit part. So as soon as you check out, you can, and you're making changes to your program, you can type in a brief description. This is very analogous to the EG when you're typing a sentence or two describing what you are making changes to this version. It captures all the other metadata automatically. The program code, who did it at what time. All the other metadata is captured. And as you work on, when you click on it, see in the right panel, it gives you all the metadata of the latest version. You can think of it like a proc contents to your program. It shows the program name, the location, who made the last update, at what time, and the little sentence that you type describing it. So this is useful. It's like the program header, if you will, at each program. It's what we refer to as the SAS program metadata. So it's all within the interface. Works very well. So I just wanted to describe one requirement. Pradeep is going to describe in the next slide some of the other requirements in our evaluation. But this one requirement we found interesting. When we worked with our IT, we found that there are many ways of configuring EG, LSAF, and the other tools that we'll talk about. And one is, do you want to start controlling your version at the folder that only contains your SAS program, or expand that into folders that contain data sets and outputs and other things that you're thinking about? And do you want the ability for the user to delete the repository, the complete history? Now, they can unintentionally delete it by accident, or maybe a team member maliciously goes in and deletes it. There's ways of preventing that. And one example is it could be configured on a separate web server. LSF is an example, but other tools, the repository is saved entirely in a different file system. But EG, as you saw, it's saved in a file that's right there in a similar related path. The user can accidentally delete it if you don't set it, configure it. So those are the types of things you should work with in your IT. The other distinction, and that I'll allude to that we'll describe in detail, is this concept of branching. If two programmers were to edit the same program at the same time, basically you're creating branches. If you think of a tree, it splits into a separate branch of a tree. But later on, you want to merge that back into the root with the trunk of the tree. So some tools that we evaluated allows for these branching and merging. SAS does not. SAS, when we spoke to the developers, they said that their philosophy is that each programmer, only one programmer should work on one program at a time, one at a time. So there's no branching capabilities. But we wanted to make that distinction because our scoring looked into this branching. And there's some configuration, of course, with IT if you want this branching or not.
Okay, so the other evaluation features that we actually looked at is, basically it was all based on ease of use. So the features, the first is setting up a repository within the environment, within the different tools. And then all the change management features, whether how easy is it to check out a file, commit, add change descriptions, and see the history of the files from previous versions as well. That provides the audit trail as well. And then the other criteria that we had is if you had two versions of the file, we wanted to see what the difference is, and does that tool allow for you to have show the actual differences like a text compare. And in our case, a lot of our users have multiple editors that they edit the SAS program out of. It does not have to be SAS Studio. They just go in and use Ultra Edit or other editors that they do. And so one of our criteria was, does the tool allow for any open editors also, for the programmer to change code through. And then, like I mentioned, a rollback was like reverting back to the previous version. And locking, what we mean by locking here is what Sai alluded to, like the fundamental principle of how SAS works is one user per program at that time. It locks the file out and doesn't provide merging and branching capabilities, which is basically the next feature that we evaluated. And the last one is slightly dependent on your organization structures. It's how well it integrates into your daily process. That's another evaluation that we did. It might not be purely scientific, but it's more like how it conforms to our workflow. So the next one.
Okay, so the other tools that we looked into that are non-SAS, it's actually very industry standard. I should say industry standard outside, like C programmers or Java programmers. They use Github and Tortoise SVN. Now, the specific version we used was GitHub Desktop. It's a little different than the web-based one. It actually runs on your Windows PC, but if you look at the history of GitHub, everything is web-based. And we also looked at Tortoise SVN, which is integrated into the Windows environment. Now, of course, if you're using a Unix platform, maybe these tools may not be applicable, but these are the other two non-SAS change control tools that we evaluated.
The next one is basically our scoring schema. We just rated from between 0 and 4, with 4 being the best and 0 being failure or not having a feature. Then it was summarized across the testers. And like I mentioned, this list is not comprehensive and it's not scientific, but it's just what we came up with, what we thought was reasonable. Next one, please. So this is just a summary of our evaluation. This is just there are only 2 testers, me and Sai. And then what you see on the back is the average score. So what we found was the core change management control features were probably comparable across all 4 tools that we used. It wasn't an issue at all. What the SAS tools did provide was the branching and merging capabilities, which we, in our organization, because it was a large group and many people keep working on similar programs. So that was our feedback. Basically, we wanted that capability, which SAS currently was not able to provide. But on the whole, all tools were pretty similar, and that's why you see the score of merging over there between SAS LSAF and SAS EG being rated very low for the category of merging. And then, the locking feature goes along with merging, so it's a flip case of the merging feature. So it kind of Where SAS does well, the merging would go low. So that's what the whole idea was. So in general, it was pretty good. So I think SAS I will allude to more on the conclusion.
Sure. I should mention that graph. Pradeep did a great job. Originally I pasted this information into Excel and had a graph, and then I'm saying this is a SAS conference. That would be blasphemous to have an Excel graph, right? So, anyways, Pradeep put it into a SAS program. He created this nice, using various SAS graph tools, and it was a great graph. But the main distinction that we saw between the tools, and it depends on your requirements. If your requirements is a multi-user and you need to edit the same program with two different team members at the same time, then the other tools, meaning the non-SAS tools, will have some benefit. But if you follow the SAS workflow of one user editing at one time, then the SAS tools become very useful in that it integrates, of course, with SAS very well. So you have to look at your own group and how you do your work. And so in conclusion, that's what we made our decision based upon what some of the feedback we had from our users. And of course, in our case, we're in a regulated environment. If you're not in a regulated environment and you don't have to do this by requirement, a legal requirement, I still think it's a useful practice because you will still need the ability to go back to old versions. But in our case, we would really need it in an audit from an FDA. If we can't show the history, it creates a problem for us. So that's the main. If you have any other concluding thoughts,
I pretty much second what you just said. I think it was a tool specific to our environment or group. So we really have to cater towards the broader audience, which would be your programming team, as to how they function when we get into a decision of what tool to benefit of.
So now we're open to any questions. We just have a few more minutes. Being the last presentation of the event, they said that we can actually run longer if we needed. But do you guys have any questions as to how you might implement your change control? We're glad to answer the question.
Yeah, I was curious, did you look at any of the documentation capabilities of these packages?
That's a good question. The SAS tools is very good in the sense that when we work with LSAF, they store the metadata in a way that we can get into. They have a whole API. So you can write a SAS program to get into the repository, the metadata, and you can use your own prop report to report upon it. They have some CAN reports, of course. All the tools have these CAN reports to show you the history. But if you want to do conditions of if, this, and that, and very specialized reporting, I think the SAS tools have more because SAS is a reporting tool, analysis and reporting, so it has more capabilities. But for the basic reporting, all the tools have them.
How about the markup maybe with Github, how people employ that, just so that you can kind of put some documentation around the entire project?
Yeah, there's a repository-specific metadata that you can add. Usually it's only like a text. You can describe what it is. There's no additional markup that we found. Just a brief description as to that project or what you're working on is what we found. Any other questions?
So I had a question. I have not used GitHub. I've heard of it on the web version. You said you're running it on individual desktops.
Yeah.
So how do you have some? You must have it on a server somewhere too.
That's a good question.
If you're editing the code on your desktop,
that's right,
and your desktop's keeping track of the changes, how does that help auditing?
That's a good question. I'll just add, and I'm sure you will add too. The question was, how does the repository and the history gets collected or managed using GitHub Desktop, because it's a desktop application. Now this is where that configuration slide that I had really comes into detail. You can work with your IT. You can configure it to store the whole repository under a subfolder in your current file system so the user working on it can see the whole database file. It's actually saved as a hidden file, but within the OS you can reveal it and you can see the database right there. Or you can configure GitHub to talk to a web server. Now, it could be an intranet web server, meaning a web server within your company, not the GitHub web server on the internet, but so for security, you might want to configure with the IT department another server, a web server, and it talks via HTTP, and it creates the repository there. So there's many different ways of configuring it. You can have it as a database local to your file system or on the remote. And that plays along with the whole security of accidental deleting the database and so forth as well. But many options available.
Well, just to add to that, basically you can put it on the server as well. Like you can treat the server as your desktop, but then all the functionality is talking locally over there. So within the whole repository. So that is the other criteria. The setting up of the repository was a criteria that I talked about. So how easy is it to set it up? So if you set it up from the server and the file system itself becomes your repository, and the hidden files are then your metadata for that file repository.
Question in the back.
Are you aware of any integration of change control into SAS Studio?
That's a good question. I did try to hit the people at SAS Studio. When I talked to the EG folks, the developers, they develop a lot of tools for this, which we described. Studio, they're thinking of, I could be a little bit behind, maybe they're working on the next version. They were thinking of adapting some of the modules from EG over to Studio, but I haven't seen it yet. So maybe if there's a SAS representative here, they can do it more accurately. But my understanding is that maybe coming, but I haven't seen the full features yet.
I'm not a SAS representative, but had the opportunity yesterday to meet with one of the SAS Studio developers and the developer. They have a working prototype.
Okay, good. So they're getting close.
Integration with GitHub. So they're not making promises.
Right.
Sometime in 2019 maybe.
Okay.
But it was really exciting to see.
Yeah.
I believe so. We were talking to some of it because they're not going to be doing like wording and stuff, so they're not getting everything sure, but they are.
Yeah, I noticed that the EG is a little bit further, and the studio may collaborate with the EG team and bring some of that over, but at this point, I haven't seen it yet, so there's a little vaporware, so I can't talk about it, but it's good that they're working on it, so hopefully we'll see that in the future. Question?
My question is, have you had any experience with version control in DI Studio?
DI Studio, I have not. I mean, I used DI Studio once to schedule a task and do various things, but I haven't used it for version control. So there may exist functionality. We haven't added that to our evaluation. Maybe another team member has.
DI Studio integrates with SVM.
Okay, great. Any other questions about change control? Well, thanks very much for joining us on our last presentation of the conference. Thank you.